The courtroom was silent as the judge's gavel slammed down. Guilty. The verdict shattered Michael Carter's life. A decorated officer with 15 years on the force, he sat handcuffed, staring at the floor. Despite his claims of innocence, the jury had ruled against him. The evidence, flawed as he knew it was enough to send him to prison. But the sentence wasn't the worst part. The worst part was leaving behind Luke, his loyal K-9 partner. The German shepherd sat at the back of the courtroom, his sharp eyes locked on Michael. Luke had been more than a partner, he'd been by Michael's side through life and death situations. Now, facing the lowest moment of his life, the thought of never seeing Luke again was unbearable. As the judge stood to leave, Michael's voice cut through the silence. "Your Honor," he said, voice breaking. "Before I'm taken away, please, let me say goodbye to Luke." The courtroom buzzed in surprise. The judge paused, studying Michael for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. 3 minutes. The moment Luke was released, he bolted toward Michael, claws clicking on the floor. Michael dropped to his knees, pulling Luke into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, buddy," Michael whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I let you down. I won't be there for you anymore." Luke whimpered, nuzzling into Michael's chest, then suddenly froze. His nose twitched frantically against Michael's jacket. He tugged at the fabric, barking sharply. The sound shattered the courtroom's silence. "What's the dog doing?" the judge asked, frowning. Luke pulled harder, barking again, insistent, urgent. Something was wrong. And Luke knew it. The sharp clink of the recording device hitting the floor sent a shockwave through the courtroom. The prosecutor's face drained of color. "This doesn't prove anything," he snapped, voice unsteady. But Luke wouldn't back down. He stood rigid, barking insistently, his trained instinct screaming that this mattered. Michael's heart pounded. Was this the proof he needed? The judge's voice cut through the tension. "Pick it up." The officer hesitated, then grabbed the recorder. The room held its breath. "What is this?" the judge demanded, eyes locked on the sweating prosecutor. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant," the prosecutor stammered. It wasn't part of the trial. But the judge wasn't convinced. "Play it." A hush fell over the courtroom as the officer pressed play. A voice crackled through the silence. "Make sure Carter takes the fall. The evidence is planted. He'll never know." Gasps erupted. The prosecutor's knees buckled. Michael's breath caught. Luke had just uncovered the truth. The real trial was about to begin. "It's been tampered with," the prosecutor blurted, his voice desperate. The judge cut him off with a razor-sharp glare. "Tampered with?" His voice was ice. In the middle of a sentencing hearing? The prosecutor flinched. "Officer, play that device. Now." The room held its breath as the officer pressed play. "Just plant the evidence. No one's gonna question it. Carter's clean record makes him the perfect scapegoat. Get it done." Gasps exploded across the courtroom. Michael's blood ran cold. He knew that voice, Captain Ray Harding, his former supervisor. The man who'd shaken his hand just weeks ago. The prosecutor lunged forward. "That's enough." Slam. The judge's gavel silenced him. "Sit down." Michael's hands shook. This was the proof. The truth. Luke let out a low growl beside him, as if saying, "I told you." The judge's next words sent shockwaves through the room. "This trial is not over." He turned to the officers. "Take the defendant back to holding. Secure that device as new evidence. We're reopening this case." As officers led Michael away, he locked eyes with Luke. The dog's gaze burned with loyalty, and something else. Certainty. This wasn't over. And now, neither of them would rest until the real criminals paid. In the cold holding cell, Michael sat on the hard bench, fists clenched. The recording was his lifeline, but the betrayal cut deeper. Captain Harding. His mentor. His friend. The man who'd handed him his badge. How deep does this go? He muttered, staring at the wall. In the judge's chambers, the air was thick with tension. The judge replayed the recording, Harding's voice slicing through the silence. Just plant the evidence. Carter's the perfect scapegoat. The judge's finger hovered over the intercom. Summon Captain Harding. Now. Outside, Harding straightened his tie, jaw tight. He'd expected today to be clean. Final. But when the bailiff delivered the summons, his pulse spiked. Inside the chambers, the judge didn't offer a seat. Just tapped the recorder. Care to explain this? Harding's mask slipped, just for a second. I'm not sure what you mean, Your Honor. The judge hit play. Harding's own voice filled the room. Get it done. The color drained from his face. The judge leaned in. Sit down, Captain. You're not leaving this room until I get the truth. Back in the cell, Michael didn't know it yet, but Luke had just handed him a weapon. And the real hunt was about to begin. Harding's smirk was paper-thin. Your Honor, this is absurd, he scoffed, forcing a laugh. That could be anyone's voice, you can't seriously. I don't think, the judge cut in, steel in his tone. I act on evidence. And this, he jabbed a finger at the recorder, is evidence of a crime. Multiple crimes. Before Harding could react, two bailiffs stepped forward. His polished composure cracked. What are you? You can't do this. You're being detained for questioning, the judge said coldly. Obstruction of justice. Falsifying evidence. And I guarantee that's just the start. As the bailiffs hauled Harding away, his protests faded down the hall. The judge exhaled, rubbing his temples. The rot went deep, but the reckoning had begun. In his cell, Michael stared at the ceiling, fists tight. Luke knew. That dog had always known. If he'd sniffed out the recorder, what else could he find? At the K-9 unit, Luke paced like a caged storm. His claws scraped concrete, his barks sharp enough to make Officer Sarah Mitchell's spine stiffen. He knows, she muttered, arms crossed. The other officers joked about the guilty dog, but Sarah's got churned. Luke only got like this once before. The night they'd busted an entire drug ring. She crouched, meeting the shepherd's burning gaze. What's eating you, boy? Luke lunged at the kennel gate, teeth bared, not at her. At Harding's empty office across the hall. Sarah's blood went cold. Oh God. They'd missed something. Sarah knelt beside Luke, her fingers tightening around the envelope. The photographs trembled in her hands, Harding shaking hands with a known drug lord. The documents spelled it out, bribes, falsified evidence, a deliberate frame job. Jesus, she whispered. Luke nudged her arm with his nose, his dark eyes locked onto hers. He wasn't just a dog, he was a partner. A detective in his own right. Sarah's phone buzzed, the judge had responded. Bring everything. Now. But as she gathered the evidence, her gut twisted. Harding didn't act alone. The department had rats. Who else was involved? Luke let out a low growl, ears pricked toward the hallway. Footsteps. Sarah froze. Too quick. Too quiet for standard patrol. The doorknob turned. She shoved the photos into her vest, clicking her fingers once. Luke's body tensed, ready. The door creaked open. And a shadowed figure stepped inside. Mitchell? The voice was familiar. Too familiar. Sarah's hand drifted to her sidearm. You're not supposed to be here, Lieutenant. Luke's lip curled, teeth bared. The lieutenant's gaze flicked to the empty desk, then back to her. Neither are you. The conspiracy runs deeper. Trust no one. Next chapter, blood hits the floor. The truth hit Michael like a gut punch. The documents spread before him weren't just evidence, they were a roadmap of corruption stretching back years. Photographs showed Harding meeting with shadowy figures in parking garages. Bank statements revealed suspicious deposits timed with case dismissals. Worst of all were the case notes, dozens of them, each detailing how evidence had been planted, witnesses coerced, and innocent people like Michael had been sacrificed to protect this rotten system. Luke whined softly, pressing his muzzle against Michael's knee as if sensing the storm of emotions raging inside him. The judge leaned forward, his voice grave. This goes far beyond your case, son. Harding wasn't working alone, he was just one cog in a much larger machine. Sarah tapped a particular document, a list of case numbers with dollar amounts beside them. This looks like a payoff ledger. And these cases? Her finger trembled slightly as she pointed. They all ended with wrongful convictions. The air left Michael's lungs. How many lives did they ruin? Dozens, the judge said quietly. Maybe hundreds. Outside the secure room, the precinct had erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled, some to distance themselves from Harding, others to cover their tracks. A loud crash echoed down the hall as someone overturned a filing cabinet. Voices rose in panic. They're auditing all the evidence lockers. Harding's naming names to save himself. We need to get ahead of this. Michael looked down at Luke, running his fingers through the dog's thick fur. You started all this, boy, he whispered. That single act of canine loyalty in the courtroom had been the thread that unraveled everything. Sarah's phone buzzed violently. She paled as she read the message. They just found Councilman Reeves' car abandoned near the state line. Empty. Blood on the seats. The judge stood abruptly. This is turning into a full-blown corruption purge. Michael, he fixed him with a piercing look. You're not just free. You're material to the biggest police corruption case this city has ever seen. As if on cue, Luke's head snapped toward the door, a deep growl building in his chest. Through the narrow window, shadowy figures moved in the hallway, too many, too fast. Someone wasn't waiting for due process. Sarah's hand went to her sidearm. We need to move. Now. The judge threw open a back exit as the first pounding started on the door. Take the service elevator. My clerk will. Bang. The door shuddered under a heavy impact. Michael didn't hesitate. He grabbed the files with one hand, Luke's leash with the other. Stay close, he ordered as they burst into the stairwell, just as the door behind them splintered open. Somewhere above, an alarm began to wail. The hunt was on, but this time, the predators had become the prey. And Luke? The K9 moved like a shadow beside Michael, ears flat, teeth bared, ready to protect his partner to the last breath. The conspiracy runs deeper than anyone imagined. Who will make it out alive? Stay tuned for the explosive next chapter. Michael stepped out of the courthouse into the blinding sunlight, the weight of his newfound freedom still settling on his shoulders. The clamor of reporters shouting questions, how does it feel to be exonerated? Will you return to the force? Who else was involved? Faded into background noise as he knelt beside Luke, burying his hands in the dog's thick fur. The warmth, the steady heartbeat against his palms, grounded him. We did it, partner, he murmured, pressing his forehead against Luke's. The German shepherd huffed softly, tail thumping once against the concrete steps, as if to say, of course we did. But the moment of relief was short-lived. Across the street, a black sedan idled at the curb, its tinted windows obscuring whoever sat inside. Michael's spine stiffened. He'd seen that car before, parked outside his apartment the night before his arrest. Sarah followed his gaze, her hand drifting instinctively to her sidearm. You see it too? Before Michael could respond, the sedan's engine revved, and it pulled away with a screech of tires, leaving behind a single, ominous detail. A department-issued parking permit dangled from the rearview mirror. "This isn't over," Sarah muttered, pulling out her phone to snap a photo of the license plate. "Whoever's left in Harding's circle knows we're coming for them." Back at the precinct, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Officers moved in hushed clusters, some casting furtive glances at Michael as he walked the halls with Luke at his heel. The once familiar space now felt like a minefield. "Carter." The voice made him turn. Deputy Chief Grayson, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for playing politics, stood in the doorway of his office. His expression was unreadable. "My office. Now." Sarah moved to follow, but Grayson held up a hand. "Alone." Luke let out a warning growl, but Michael gave a subtle hand signal, "Stand down." "It's okay," he said, though his gut twisted. "Watch the door." Inside, Grayson shut the blinds before slapping a thick file onto his desk. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest, son." Michael didn't flinch. Truth has a way of doing that. Grayson flipped open the file, crime scene photos from a decade ago. A body in an alley. A young officer standing over it, face obscured by shadows. "Recognize this?" Grayson tapped the image. Harding's first big case. The one that made his career. He leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "Only problem?" The suspect confessed, after Harding interrogated him for 12 hours straight. "Sound familiar?" Michael's blood ran cold. "You're saying?" "I'm saying this goes back further than you think." Grayson slid another photo forward, this one showing Harding and the city councilman at a fundraiser, laughing over drinks. And higher. A knock at the door. Sarah's voice, sharp with urgency, "Michael. Now." He turned to see her holding up her phone, a live news alert. Breaking, City Councilman Reeves abruptly resigns amid personal matters. Grayson's smile was grim. The rats are jumping ship. That night, Michael sat on the floor of his sparse apartment, Luke sprawled beside him as he pored over the files Sarah had smuggled out. Every page revealed another thread in the web, falsified reports, missing evidence, witnesses who'd vanished. Luke's ears suddenly pricked. A low growl. Someone was outside. Michael froze, hand drifting to the gun safe, just as his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging. Or the dog dies next." The screen went black. Outside, a car engine roared to life, and tires squealed into the night. They were fighting for survival. The list of names Sarah had uncovered wasn't just a lead, it was a death warrant for anyone who dared expose it. Officers. Politicians. Crime bosses. All connected, all protected, all willing to kill to keep their secrets buried. Michael tossed the file onto the table, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet safe house they'd been forced to use. "We take this public. Now. Before they silence us for good." Sarah shook her head, her fingers tapping nervously against her coffee mug. "We can't trust the media. Half these people own the press. We need irrefutable proof, something even they can't spin." Luke, who had been lying at Michael's feet, suddenly lifted his head. His ears pricked forward, nostrils flaring. Then came the sound. A car door slamming outside. Too close. Sarah's hand flew to her gun. "We didn't tell anyone about this place." Michael moved to the window, peeling back the curtain just enough to see. 2 black SUVs. No plates. Darkened windows. "We've got company." Luke was on his feet now, a low, warning growl rumbling in his chest. Sarah grabbed the files, shoving them into a fireproof bag. Back exit. Now. But it was too late. A crash. The front door splintered inward. "Police. Hands where we can see them." Michael's blood turned to ice. Police. But not their police. Sarah's eyes locked onto his. They're not here to arrest us. Luke's snarl turned vicious as shadows filled the hallway. Michael made a split-second decision. Run. They bolted for the back, just as the first gunshot shattered the window behind them. The box was labeled Evidence Storage, case number 4821, but the files inside were anything but routine. As Michael lifted the lid, a musty smell wafted out, along with something else. The sharp, metallic tang of blood. Luke whined, nudging a manila envelope buried beneath a stack of paperwork. Sarah's breath hitched. That's not just a case file. Michael pulled it out. The envelope was unmarked, but the weight was all wrong, too heavy for paper. He tore it open. A flash drive clattered onto the table. And beneath it? A photograph. Michael's hands shook as he held it up. The image showed Harding standing with 3 other high-ranking officers, and a man whose face sent a jolt of recognition through them both. Mayor Calloway, Sarah whispered. The same mayor who'd championed law and order reforms. The same mayor who'd personally awarded Harding a medal last year. Luke growled, his hackles rising. Michael flipped the photo over. Scrawled in hurried handwriting. They killed Martinez. They'll kill you too. R.S. Officer Ramon Martinez. A cop who died in a so-called random shooting 6 months ago. The same cop who'd been asking too many questions about Harding's cases. Sarah's face went pale. This isn't just corruption. It's murder. Michael slammed his fist on the table. We go public. Tonight. But before Sarah could respond, the lights flickered, then died. The hum of the building's HVAC cut off. Silence. Then, the distant creak of a door opening. Footsteps. Multiple. Luke's snarl was the only warning before glass shattered somewhere down the hall. Sarah drew her gun. They found us. Michael grabbed the flash drive and photo, shoving them into his pocket. Back exit. Move. But as they turned, a shadow filled the doorway. A voice chuckled. Going somewhere, heroes. The muzzle flash lit up the dark. The tires screamed against wet asphalt as Sarah wrenched the steering wheel left, barely avoiding a dumpster that materialized in the alley's darkness. Michael braced against the dashboard, the G-force slamming Luke into his legs. The German Shepherd recovered instantly, claws scrabbling for purchase as he launched himself onto the back seat, positioning himself to watch their pursuers through the rear window, his muzzle wrinkled in a snarl. Take the next right. Michael barked, spotting a construction zone ahead. Sarah didn't hesitate. The car fishtailed as they careened around the corner, plunging into a maze of concrete barriers and half-built scaffolding. The SUV followed, its high beams cutting through the rain like searchlights. Then, the unmistakable crack of gunfire. A side mirror exploded in a shower of plastic. Jesus! Sarah ducked instinctively as another round punched through the rear windshield, leaving a spiderweb of fractures. Luke hit the floorboards with a yelp. Michael's blood turned to fire. He reached for his service weapon, then froze. The doctored files slid across the dashboard as Sarah took another sharp turn, revealing what he'd missed before, a tiny symbol drawn in red ink beneath Harding's signature. A triangle with 3 dots. The same symbol spray-painted on the construction barriers flashing past. This isn't random, Michael realized aloud, voice raw. They herded us here. Sarah's knuckles went white on the wheel. The alley dead-ended ahead, blocked by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The SUV screeched to a halt behind them, doors flying open. No time to think. Michael grabbed Luke's harness with one hand, the evidence bag with the other. Go. Go. They exploded from the car just as muzzle flashes lit the night. Sarah returned fire, providing cover as Michael boosted Luke over the fence. The dog cleared it effortlessly, landing in a defensive crouch on the other side. Michael was halfway up when white-hot pain seared through his calf. He fell, catching himself on the fence's jagged metal links. Blood slicked his fingers. Luke's frantic bark sounded distant through the ringing in his ears. Sarah hauled him up by his vest. "Move your ass, Carter." They tumbled over together, hitting the ground as another volley pinged off the fence. The SUV's engine revved, they'd be coming around. Michael limped forward, but Luke was already surging ahead, nose working frantically. The dog stopped at a storm drain, barking once before vanishing into the darkness below. Sarah didn't question it. They pried up the grate, sliding into the tunnel just as headlights swept the alley above. The icy water came up to their knees, the stench of sewage overwhelming. Luke stood waiting, ears pricked toward a faint humming sound. Michael followed the dog's gaze, a blinking red light duct taped to the tunnel wall. An old maintenance phone. Sarah yanked it free. The screen flickered to life, displaying a single image, Mayor Calloway shaking hands with a known cartel lieutenant at some gala, Harding smiling in the background. Beneath it, a message. "Keep digging. I'll light the way. R.S. Ramon Martinez's initials." The dead cop had left them a trail. Michael exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to Luke's soaked fur. The dog leaned into him, warm and solid despite the freezing water. Somewhere above, car doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. Sarah met Michael's eyes in the gloom. "This goes deeper than we imagined." He nodded, tightening his grip on the evidence bag. "Then we follow it all the way to hell." Luke growled low in his throat, ready to lead them there. The laptop screen flickered as the live feed showed Captain Reeves sliding a thick envelope across the desk to Mayor Calloway. The mayor's fingers drummed impatiently before he tore it open, stack of $100 bills spilling out. Sarah's breath hitched. "That's evidence. Direct evidence." Luke whined, pressing against Michael's leg as heavy footsteps echoed outside the depot. They'd been followed. Michael snapped the laptop shut, shoving it into their evidence bag along with Reeves' badge. "We need to move, now." Sarah gripped her bleeding shoulder. "Where?" "Every cop in the city's either dirty or compromised." A metallic clang sounded from the depot's loading bay, someone kicking open the service entrance. Luke's growl vibrated through Michael's boots as he made a split-second decision. Martinez knew this would happen. He grabbed Sarah's arm, dragging her toward the rows of parked buses. "He left us an exit." They barely made it to bus number 17 as the first flashlight beams swept the depot. The engine roared to life when Michael turned the key Martinez had left in the ignition. Sarah collapsed into the passenger seat, her face pale with pain. Since when do dead cops plan this well? Since they knew the whole system was rotten. Michael threw the bus into gear just as armed figures flooded the platform. Gunfire shattered the windshield. Luke barked furiously from the jump seat as Michael floored it, the massive vehicle plowing through the depot's chain-link gate. Tires screeched as they careened onto the rain-slicked streets, bullets pinging off the rear bumper. Sarah fumbled with the laptop, pulling up a GPS tracker Martinez had pre-programmed. "Head for the docks. Warehouse 9. The screen flashed red, a second signal intercepting theirs. "They're hacking the feed." Michael swerved around a corner, nearly tipping the massive vehicle. "How long?" 3 minutes max before the laptop died with a pop. Sarah cursed. "They found us." Then, a new sound. Helicopter rotors. A searchlight speared through the downpour, trapping them in its glare. "Police. Stop the vehicle." Sarah laughed bitterly, blood seeping through her fingers. Oh, now they remember their cops. Michael's knuckles whitened on the wheel. The docks were close, but so was the chopper. Luke suddenly lunged between them, paws on the dashboard. His nose pressed against the windshield, body rigid with purpose. There. A gap between warehouses. A chance. Michael yanked the wheel. Hang on. The bus tilted on two wheels as they shot through the narrow alley, shearing off mirrors and side panels in a shower of sparks. The helicopter overshot, its light sweeping wildly as they burst onto Pier 14. Straight toward Warehouse 9's yawning loading door. The impact rattled their bones as the bus crashed through stacks of crates before lurching to a stop. Silence. Then, boots on pavement. Lots of them. Sarah groaned, reaching for her gun. Plan B. Michael checked his ammo. 2 rounds left. Luke bared his teeth at the shadows converging outside. We make them regret it, Michael said. As the first flashbang rolled through the shattered windshield, the trio moved as one. Into the firestorm. The emergency exit door slammed open as they stumbled into the alleyway, gasping for clean air. The night was alive with the wail of distant sirens. Backup was coming, but whose side would they be on? Luke shook his head violently, clearing the tear gas from his nostrils before immediately snapping his attention to the rooftops above. A click of a rifle safety being disengaged sent Michael diving to shove Sarah behind a dumpster just as a bullet sparked off the pavement where she'd stood. Snipers. Michael barked, pressing against the filthy metal as another round ricocheted nearby. Sarah clutched the files to her chest, her breath ragged. They really don't want this getting out. Luke's ears flattened as a new sound emerged, the whine of a drone descending from above, its red targeting laser sweeping the alley. Michael's blood ran cold. They're not police. This is military grade. A metallic thump sounded as the drone dropped something, a canister with a blinking light. Grenade. Luke moved faster than thought. He lunged, jaws clamping around the device before it hit the ground, and hurled it back upward with a whip of his neck. The explosion lit up the night sky, showering them in burning debris as the drone disintegrated. Sarah stared at the dog in awe. Remind me to get him steak dinners for life. No time to celebrate. The back door of the conference room burst open again, 3 more armed figures spilling out, their faces obscured by tactical masks. Michael raised his weapon, but Luke was already moving. The K-9 launched himself at the lead attacker, going straight for the throat this time. The man's scream was cut short as they crashed to the ground. Gunfire erupted. Sarah returned shots from behind the dumpster, her bullets finding their mark in a second attacker's leg. The third swung their rifle toward her. A flash of movement. Officer Ramirez came barreling around the corner, tackling the gunman to the pavement. "Go," he roared, wrestling for control of the weapon. "I'll hold them." Michael hesitated only a second before grabbing Sarah's arm. "Bus depot, now." They ran, Luke clearing the path ahead, his nose working overtime to detect threats. The streets were eerily empty, the usual nightlife absent, someone had cordoned off the area. As they rounded the last corner, the bus depot's floodlights came into view. Warehouse 9 loomed in the distance, its rusted doors slightly ajar. A shadow moved inside. Michael slowed, weapon raised. Martinez's contact. Sarah wiped blood from her brow. Or another trap. Luke sniffed the air, then let out a soft woof, his clear signal. They stepped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, stacked with shipping containers. At the center stood a single figure, a woman in a detective's jacket, her badge glinting under the lone hanging bulb. She turned. Lieutenant Vasquez. Internal Affairs. And in her hands, a thumb drive. "Took you long enough," she said, tossing it to Michael. "Martinez died to protect this. Don't make his sacrifice worthless." The drive was labeled in familiar red ink. "For when the wolves come wearing badges." Outside, the sirens grew louder. The real battle was just beginning. The answer came in a sickening click from outside, the sound of a rifle scope adjusting in the darkness. Luke's growl turned into a snarl as headlights suddenly flooded the cabin's front windows. Not police cruisers. Black SUVs, engines idling, doors already opening. Sarah slammed the files into a waterproof bag. Back exit. Now. They moved as one, Michael grabbing their weapons, Sarah shoving the evidence into her jacket, Luke leading the charge toward the rear. Too late. A flashbang detonated behind them. The world dissolved into white noise and searing light. Michael hit the floor, his vision swimming, but Luke, trained for this, was already lunging at the first shadow that burst through the door. Sarah dragged Michael up, blood trickling from her nose. Move. They stumbled into the tree line just as automatic gunfire shredded the cabin's walls. Bullets chewed through pine bark around them as they ran deeper into the woods. Michael's ears were still ringing when he saw it, a flicker of movement to their left. Ambush. He tackled Sarah behind a fallen log as muzzle flashes lit up the forest. Dirt sprayed around them. Luke vanished into the underbrush, only to reappear moments later with a guttural snarl from behind their attackers. Chaos. Shouts. A gun clattering to the ground. A choked-off cry. Then, silence. Luke trotted back, muzzle dark and wet. No time to process. Sarah grabbed Michael's arm. There's an old ranger station half a mile north. We can regroup there. The station was a rotting shack, but it had a landline. Sarah dialed a number from memory. It's Mitchell. Code Black. Send extraction to Grid Delta 9. She hung up, her hands shaking. Feds have a team inbound. 1 hour. Michael pressed a towel to the graze on his bicep, watching the tree line. We don't have an hour. Luke's sudden whine made them both turn. On the cracked TV in the corner, a news bulletin flashed. Breaking, Deputy Chief Aldrich Reeves found dead in apparent suicide. Sources say he was linked to the ongoing police corruption scandal. Sarah's breath caught. They're tying up loose ends. Michael stared at the screen. No. They're framing him. Because in the grainy footage behind the reporter, barely visible, Mayor Calloway shaking hands with a federal prosecutor. The ultimate power play. Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown caller. She answered. Put it on speaker. A voice, distorted but triumphant, you lose. Then, the distant whomp of helicopters. Not rescue. Cleanup. Michael looked at Luke. At Sarah. At the files that could burn a city to the ground. Then we don't let them win. He grabbed the landline. Dialed one number. The line picked up instantly. This is Carter. I want live airtime in 10 minutes. And someone get me the Attorney General's private line. A pause. Then, it's done. Sarah's eyes widened. Who was that? Michael allowed himself a grim smile. The only reporter Martinez ever trusted. Outside, the first helicopter searchlight swept the trees. Time to light the fuse. The courtroom fell deathly silent as the judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Guilty. The verdict hit Michael Carter like a physical blow. The decorated officer sat handcuffed, staring at the floor, his 15-year career evaporating in an instant. Despite his sworn innocence, the jury had believed the fabricated evidence. But the prison sentence wasn't what shattered him, it was losing Luke, his loyal K-9 partner, who watched from the back of the courtroom with intelligent eyes that never left his handler. As the judge stood to adjourn, Michael's voice broke through the tension. Your Honor, he rasped, before I'm taken away, please let me say goodbye to Luke. The room murmured in surprise as the judge considered, then nodded. 3 minutes. When released, Luke charged forward, his claws clicking frantically across the courtroom floor. Michael dropped to his knees, embracing the German shepherd as tears streamed down his face. I'm so sorry, partner, he whispered into Luke's fur. But as Michael poured out his apology, Luke suddenly stiffened, his nose working urgently against Michael's jacket. The dog began barking sharply, tugging at the fabric with his teeth. "What's he doing?" the judge demanded as officers moved cautiously forward. With a metallic clink, a small recording device dislodged from Michael's jacket and clattered to the floor. The prosecutor turned pale. "This proves nothing," he blurted, but Luke's continued alerts told another story. When played, the recording revealed damning words, "Just plant the evidence. Carter's clean record makes him the perfect scapegoat." The voice was unmistakable, Captain Ray Harding, Michael's former supervisor. The courtroom erupted as the judge immediately ordered a case review. Days later, with the conspiracy unraveling, Michael stood on his porch scratching behind Luke's ears. "We did it, boy," he murmured as the dog leaned into his touch. The once tense K9 now looked at peace, his sharp eyes calm for the first time in weeks. Their unbreakable bond had not only cleared Michael's name but exposed corruption reaching the highest levels of their city. As the evening sun painted the sky in golden hues, Luke sprawled across the porch with a contented sigh, his tail thumping rhythmically against the wooden planks. The fight was over. The truth had won. And through it all, one thing remained certain: no partner, human or otherwise, had ever proven more loyal than Luke. It didn't matter, they were here. The first shot shattered the stillness, blasting through the cabin's window. Glass sprayed across the room as Michael shoved Sarah behind the table for cover. Luke barked furiously, standing his ground at Michael's side. More shots. The attackers were closing in. Michael took a deep breath, adrenaline flooding his veins. "Stay down," he told Sarah. "Luke and I will hold them off." He and Luke moved in perfect sync as the attackers breached the front door. Michael fired, taking out one of the intruders. Luke lunged at another, his powerful jaws bringing the man down. But the attackers kept coming. Sarah crawled toward the files, grabbing the most important documents and stuffing them into a bag. "Michael," she shouted over the gunfire. "We need to get these out of here, now." Michael nodded, his face grim. "Go. Luke and I will cover you." Sarah hesitated for only a split second before slipping out the back door, disappearing into the darkness with the evidence in hand. Michael and Luke held their ground, pushing back the attackers with every ounce of strength they had. Just as the last intruder fell, sirens echoed in the distance. Backup had finally arrived. Days later, the story broke nationwide. Sarah had delivered the files to a trusted journalist, and the resulting exposé brought the entire corrupt network crashing down. Arrests were made at every level, from crooked officers to AR himself, revealed as a powerful local politician who had been using the police department as his personal enforcers. Michael was hailed as a hero, though he brushed off the attention. Standing on the porch of his home, he watched Luke play in the yard. The loyal dog had saved him more times than he could count, and their bond had grown unbreakable. "We did it, boy," Michael said softly, kneeling to scratch behind Luke's ears. "It's over." Luke wagged his tail, leaning into Michael's touch. His sharp eyes were calm, for the first time in weeks. It wasn't just the end of a battle, it was the dawn of a life he'd almost forgotten was possible. The weight of it all hit him then, not just the bullets dodged or the enemies fallen, but every silenced voice they'd fought for. Every broken soul who'd trusted the wrong hands. The ghosts of this war lived in him, but here, now. Luke's joyful barks rang across the field as he bounded after the ball, his fur glowing amber in the sunset. This was why they'd endured. Not for glory, not for vengeance, but for the right to breathe like this again. To feel safe. To remember what it meant to come home. Michael knelt in the grass, his calloused hands trembling as Luke barreled into him, all wagging tail and warm panting breaths. He buried his face in the dog's fur, hiding the tears he'd sworn he'd never shed. "We made it, brother," he whispered. And for the first time in years, he believed it. Pause for emotion. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the darkest nights end with dawn. Honor that feeling. Send a super sticker to tell us what this moment meant to you. Because stories like this, they're not just told, they're felt. And you're why we keep telling them. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. For listening. For remembering. For being part of this journey. Now go hug someone you'd fight for. Even if it's just yourself.